Is the Supreme Court having to do with immunity? I heard the argument was brilliant. I listened to it last night. I thought it was really great. I thought the judge's questions were great. And all presidents have to have immunity. It has nothing to do with me. Absolutely nothing.
Has nothing to do with him. That's 100% a lie. The arguments were great. That's 100% a lie. But what's not a lie is how he feels, Donald Trump. See, everything he's saying is a lie. But the reason he's saying it without a scowl on his face is that he is actually happy about what happened. Not happy because he thinks it's actually setting a good precedent that any president going forward would be able to commit literally any crime they want and get away with it. Not because he believed that his lawyers did a good job, they very much did not. But because it really doesn't matter what job they do, because it's already delayed some of the federal trials against him. This consideration by the Supreme Court of the farcical idea of absolute presidential immunity. And even though they didn't do a very good job, it looks like he might get even more of what he wants, which is just a delay. He wants a denial of the ability of the American people to know whether he committed the crimes he is alleged to have committed before Election Day. And if he gets to Election Day and somehow wins, which is very much a real possibility, we might well never find out what actually happened with the classified documents and on January 6th. Hey, I'm glad you're here. Listen, in order for the damage report to keep on going, we need viewers like you to become a member on YouTube. Can you click the join button on YouTube today? Thank you. How did we get here though? How did we get to the point where he's feeling so emboldened? I wanna give you a couple of little insights into how some of the different Supreme Court justices are thinking about this and some of the insane statements they're making, starting with Clarence Thomas.
In not so distant past, the presidents or certain presidents have engaged in various activity, coups or operations like Operation Mongoose when I was a teenager, and yet there were no prosecutions. Why? If what you're saying is right, it would seem that would have been ripe for criminal prosecution of someone.
Now that is an insane argument to make for like three simultaneous reasons. First of all, yes, he is right that presidents have engaged in coups or whatever. Importantly, they hadn't generally done it here. And I don't think, and they call me a radical, I don't think we should be overthrowing any governments. But I particularly think we shouldn't overthrow our own. But even if you don't care about that, you might say, well, Clarence Thomas, who shouldn't even be hearing this, he should be recusing himself from all of this stuff having to do with January 6th, is at least acknowledging that we have done things like an Operation Mongoose trying to overthrow the Cuban government or whatever. And he's saying, well, then why wasn't there charges there? But that is not what he is debating right now. It's not about whether there should have been charges, it's whether there could be charges. I would say the reason there weren't charges in all these cases where presidents did clearly insane, unethical, immoral, and possibly illegal things is because the system has always been set up to protect those in power, to let them do whatever they want, law and constitution be damned. The question right now is whether Clarence Thomas is going to be a part of that. And so we have more, we have a lot more, and it gets even crazier. But Brett, what do you make of that?
I didn't, no one expects Operation Mongoose. No one expects Clarence Thomas to talk. Clarence Thomas notoriously for decades didn't say any words during these moments. He was the guy who just sat there and didn't ask a single question because he's this stupid. Like, so him saying, yeah, if presidents have engaged in coups, that's like saying presidents have shot guns. It's like, not at American people. I've shot guns, but there's like a difference between firing of a gun and shooting at a person. The same way there's a difference between a coup trying to, Cold War us out of the Cold War and trying to overthrow the American government. But kudos to Thomas for making this coup sound cool by equating it implicitly equating it to an operation with a cool name. This coup was a bunch of idiots trying to overthrow the government in person and a bunch of phone calls. It was a boring ass coup, but that doesn't make it any less of a coup. A bunch of boring ass recordings of Nixon got him in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And it does have a cool name. Operation Mongoose is cool. It is real, by the way. It might sound made up. It might sound like one of my stories that I write or whatever, but no, it is actually real. I would have, like, obviously we're not allowed to ask questions there, but I would have loved to ask like follow-up question to Clarence Thomas, like, hey, maybe if there had been charges after those other coups, we wouldn't have had ours. And if you believe that, then maybe we could project forward that if you don't allow there to be charges in this one, why wouldn't there be another? Like that's sort of that's the thing that's hanging over all of this. If you decide that they can't be charged for anything, how in hell do you think that that will not lead to more criminality?
Well, just basically to give people an idea of what the hell is happening, like this portion of the judicial system is like when it's the Supreme Court. It's like when Neo finally has a conversation with the architect in the Matrix series. Like it's a bunch of driveling philosophical nonsense that essentially will end up dictating how our universe is structured.
Yeah,
that's
100%.
what it is. And so a lot of these, there's a lot of options at the disposal of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court in this scenario is supposed to ask questions that will end up factoring into whatever decision they make to proceed, to kick it down, to say no offhand, or just to actually have the actual case heard, before them.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of these weird philosophical questions, many of which are either like ways that these Supreme Court justices can kind of make you think they're on one track or another, but just remember that these Supreme Court justices were selected in a farm system essentially to go to the major leagues, which is the Supreme Court. And it had nothing to do with whether they were really good in this portion of the conversation.
Yeah,
it's whether they will make the decisions they were always already chosen because they would make them.
When you click the join button and become a tier 2 member, you get access to all of our weekly top 10 lists. What are you waiting for?